Hey everybody, Cinephile Mike here, and I am excited to be joined by Vanessa Esteves and Kevin Micallef, the producers and co-directors of the animated short Christopher and the Bug, with Vanessa also serving as the film's writer, which is screening this weekend at the Cleveland International Film Festival. Christopher and the Bug, blending gentle humor with emotional insight. This film tells the story of a reclusive owl whose solitary world gets turned upside down by an unexpected visitor, and it unfolds into this touching exploration of loneliness, empathy, and the courage to connect. Vanessa, Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
having us.
So, anyone can answer this one first. You both come from strong animation backgrounds. This film feels like such a personal, character driven story. What was it about Christopher and the Bug that made this be the one for the two of you to step into the director's chair?
Do you want me to go first, Kevin?
Well, your
Sure.
story, it's all driven from your background.
So Christopher and it actually started as a live action, if you can believe it. When I wrote the film originally, it was meant to be a human with a bug coming into his house, and it was a dark comedy in live action. But as the story sat with me and couldn't get funding right away, it kind of changed with me through the different stages of my life, and my career moved towards animation. And then I spent time on more of the children's storytelling front. And it eventually landed me to the point where the film was optioned by Nelvana, a studio that Kevin and I were both working for at the time. And it just clicked into place as soon as my brain wrapped itself around this should be animation and this should be told at almost a younger level. So the story is meant for kids of all ages, but it really feels like a children's film, and we wanted it to be accessible by all those ages. So as soon as that locked into place for me, I couldn't see it any other way. And that's when Kevin stepped on board, and we started to think about how we could, flesh this out in the 2D landscape. And that's kind of how that journey started.
Is there anything to add or
For me, I have been directing for almost 20 years and more to television series. So this was a different um, project to work on as a short. So I was really a great pleasure when Vanessa had asked me to join and co-direct on this lovely little film. So it was a wonderful experience.
and this film really carries this gentle balance of humor and emotional depth. It's whimsical, but there's that loneliness. And it's interesting that you said that this at one point was like a dark comedy with an adult and a bug. And I'm not gonna lie, I really want to see that now.
Yeah, it was. Did you ever watch Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yes.
This is weird, but I said this to someone the other day. I just seen that, and that kind of artistic, like the art palette in that, and the lighting, and the that leading character. That was what I had in my brain for Christopher when I started the journey. So it was incredibly different, but we're happy with where it turned out. But that's where it started.
No, like I said, I love this film. I said that off camera, but I'm curious now. You've piqued my curiosity to see that variant. So as it was taking this journey into the children's realm, how did you shape it so that the tone would still resonate for both younger audiences and adults?
Do you want to answer that one, Kevin?
Yeah, I think the decision to make Christopher an owl um, really clicked for us as well. Because again, I think it was still an idea of doing a human character for a little bit, but then it was like, what does this character look like, and what age, and if it's an older character, a younger audience is going to want to watch this older gentleman like puttering around their house. So, just again, I guess like you're mentioning about tapping into Disney, where a lot of wonderful films have a full animal cast. So I think that decision as well really helped tell an aged up story, but that can resonate with kids. And I mean, there's some themes in there that probably young children aren't picking up on, and hopefully they'll rewatch every Christmas and eventually take on those deeper themes about what we're trying to say. Um, and then again, that's why I think we added the little bits of comedy where that's what they're going to be entertained with, and then our adults watching it are really picking up on what we're trying to tell here.
And co-directing a anything can be such a unique creative dynamic. And you referenced before, Vanessa, the two of you were working for the same company. So when you decided to come on board for this, the two of you, how did you either divide responsibilities, or where did you find yourselves really pushing or elevating each other creatively? Talk about your process.
Yeah, that's it. That's a great question. So the project was in CG. I'm gonna blow your mind here. It was in all the things before it was in 2D. But the project was in CG in development with myself and another artist. And then I made the decision to move it into 2D for many reasons. The story just felt storybook-esque, and we wanted this
Mhm.
to be like we've called it a bedtime story for adults that kids can also enjoy. But at that point, once we made the pivot to 2D, that's when I brought Kevin in and we started to really visualize this in that nostalgic style of 2D, I guess, referencing films that we had watched when we were kids that we grew up on. And once we got to that point, we just started to do everything together. Would you agree, Kevin? Like
Absolutely.
we didn't divide the roles, or the
No.
role. We didn't divide the duties. We just did everything together. We'd sit in the edit suite together. We'd look at the retakes together. We would lots of phone calls. We would always chat with one another, as you have to do. I think both of us have had creative partnerships beforehand where you have to be a united front when you come with your final set of notes for whoever it is you're directing. So we would just talk about everything, make sure that we were aligned with our vision, and then move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think as a short form, yeah, we just wanted to share the entire process together. I mean, if it was a longer, feature or series, I've worked on co-directing with others where it's a series and you definitely want, you go here, I'm here, because there's a lot of overlap. But with this short
Yeah.
form, and we both felt so strongly about it. Yeah, we just did everything together and creative brainstorming and problem solving and just encouraged each other. It was great.
And so that leads me to ask Vanessa, specifically for you, because you wrote the screenplay. How did you go about tackling all these heavy and wonderful themes to look at, and attempt to capture them all in such a short format? Not an easy thing to do.
No, it wasn't an easy thing to do. And I will be honest here and say that the intention for the script was completely different when it was first written. Forget about it being live action dark comedy. My point of view was different. I was coming out of a situation with a bad roommate, and I was Christopher. But it was a dark comedy in the sense that there was no redemption. I didn't feel the main character needed to be redeemed at the end. I was really young, and it was a terrible situation, and that bug needed to get out of my house. But because I didn't make it at that young age and it stayed with me, every time I would go back and check in on the script, I would have a different perspective on it. So, in all truth, I started as Christopher, and I really think I ended as the narrator because it went from being this story of, that bug needs to move on with its life to being, well, step back and look at this situation. And if Christopher could just let it go, like he goes to these great lengths, the comedy escalates and his frustration escalates to a point where the audience is like, what are you doing? You're making this so much worse for yourself. And I wanted to be able to tell that story that if you just let it in, whatever it is, and the bug can represent something different for you than it represents for me, than it represents for Kevin. But if you just don't put so much effort into being angry and hating something and you just let it in and wash over you, it might change you for the better. And we see that it does change Christopher for the better in this film. And so that was a neat writing process for me because when I got to the point of writing Christopher as an owl and made this decision to want to reach, younger audience with it as well, it became a story of teaching. If a 7-year-old watches this and says, "Oh yeah, I'm not really nice to that one person who's just trying to be friends with me. Maybe I should let them in and learn a little bit more about them." That's kind of the story that we wanted to tell, the message that we wanted to put out there. And it was completely different from where I started. So it was a very interesting writing process, unlike anything I've done before, for sure.
And it's interesting you say that, because I feel, not with the roommate situation, but I feel as I was watching, I even saw a little bit of myself at different times in Christopher, and I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, like a little bit of that loner energy.
Right.
um, and it's
Be
interesting
nicer
you
to your
say that,
neighbors.
yeah. And being educational, so I work in education, so I was even saying this is like almost like a great like socialization film for little kids to watch about like
Yeah.
accepting different people. And I thought that was a beautiful thing. And as you said, as the script was developing and you saw yourself in Christopher and ended up as a narrator, and Christopher is so great to look at. So Kevin, I have to ask, he's so expressive without saying a word. As the designer on the character, can you walk me through how his design and performance evolved from the concept to what we get on screen?
Sure. Yeah, I remember that process. We had a few designers doing some iterations, and we just obviously came up with sort of a paragraph of what Christopher is about and what, his personality. And I had done some designs as well that just resonated with Vanessa and a couple other people on the team. Um, and then continue to move forward. And it was an interesting process because as I was doing some development drawings and concepts, um, at first I was pushing it forward. And again, it was like, my experience with Disney, I had referenced some animal characters, even some owls in some of their films, but they articulate very much like a human,
Mhm.
the way their hands work or their wings work like hands and things like
Mhm.
that. And my original drawings were pushed that much further. And it was Vanessa's call, which was great. She's just like, let's really make him an owl. Like, I know he's walking around in a house and he's got a bed to sleep in and stuff, but
Forgot
let's.
about that.
Oh, what's that?
I forgot about that. He had like fingers and stuff, didn't
Well, yeah,
he?
because I remember having him on the couch and I had him sitting like that on
Yes.
the couch and just how he would pick up his mug and stuff like that. Like it was more like
Right.
a hand, which again, we see that in some Disney features where there's owls, characters where that have, or even in Secret of NIMH, the crow, just the way his wings work. So I
Hmm.
those, and it was a great call from Vanessa where she's like, let's really pull back. Let's really try to keep him an owl as much as we can. Um, and then that clicked, and that really helped us. So that also, um, sort of gave us the idea of how much we're going to express his face. We're not going to push it to beyond what an owl would be able to do. So that informed that decision as well. And our animator Samantha, who's the one animator for the entire film, did an incredible job. Just little subtle things that just made you feel for Christopher or just start laughing or just smiling at this situation. But it was subtle. It was decision to go to pull back and be subtle with it.
And as you moved into the final product, Vanessa, I'm curious, based on where, and I know this, it sounds like this film has had quite the journey from its original idea to its final execution. How much do you feel, even with the changes, you've been able to capture the essence of what you hoped to do at the beginning with the finished product? Like how,
It's so much more. I'm not just saying that. It's every step of the way in production. I think for both Kevin and I was like, oh, like it just kept getting better. As soon as we got to score, oh my goodness, that was the most fun. Putting that additional layer of music into it really made absolutely everything click. But the film it's better than I could have ever imagined. The team that came together on this really shaped it and plussed it and sent it in pathways that we maybe hadn't considered when we first started. So I think that it's amazing. And
so
yes, completely in line with what I had hoped, just a better version of it.
And so I'm going to jump to this question now because you referenced it. The score does add so much lightness and
Oh,
emotional texture to the film. What was the collaboration like with your composer, with Ryan Carlson? What was that like? What were those conversations like to pick the right music for this?
well, we started with just Kevin and I, and we obviously, as it goes, we wrote our music brief and talked about references. Of course, we had a lot of John Williams reference in there. The Harry Potter orchestral sound, and Home Alone was a big reference.
Yep.
Um, and then we handed that over to. We actually worked with the music producer Laura Nikolic, and we used her as our translator, I guess, because she speaks the language of music in ways that we do not. So she was really amazing at kind of listening to all of our wants and needs and hopes and dreams, and then being able to translate that for Ryan in a way that made him be able to create this whole layer of the film in score. We went back and forth a few times, I think, as you know, as it goes, and Ryan was just kept giving us better and better versions. I think that the not to give too much away, but the
Yeah.
chase scene that kind of builds right to that climactic point was so powerful. The first time we heard it, I don't think you could unhear it. I can't imagine the score being anything else now. But he just knocked it out of the park. Everything we would ask him for, he would turn it around, and he would have understood exactly what we needed for that scene.
And in a narrated short like this, because you've referenced the narrator, when we have something like that, it's either going to be made or broken by the person that narrates this. And I have to say,
Mhm.
Benedict Campbell's performance was so wonderful. And for him, it was a mashup of two different childhood classics for me. But I'm going to hold off on them till I ask this. But how did he come aboard to the project? What was the collaboration like to find the tone of what he did? Because it was absolutely perfection.
It was perfection. We sent, as we would do with casting at, a TV series on a TV series project, we had our casting brief, we shared it out. We had different people read for the role. We tried on some, I won't even list them off, but we had some incredible Canadian talent read for this. We asked everyone. If there was someone that we admired, we would ask them to read for it, and they said yes, right? It was, you don't know unless you ask.
Mm-hmm.
And then Benedict's read, as soon as we all heard it, I'm going to say it again, like the score, there was nobody else. As soon as we heard Benedict read it, it was a bedtime story for adults, right? He had that beautiful, I thought he was British and he's not British. Right, Kevin? Am I
Yeah,
now? You have to
yeah,
fact check me. But it
yeah.
was just that way of telling a story that you want to listen to him. You're going to listen to anything he says, and he has the perfect cadence for guiding the audience through the story. So once we heard his take, because he did audition, there was no going back. It was just him, and he was so amazing to work with. Even now, we give him updates on the film, and he's so supportive. And everybody who talks with us about the film points out Benedict's performance because it makes it.
Yeah. When you mentioned about the score had really kind of locked us in. Yeah, it was the narrator as well. As soon as we had that, because again, it was that idea of the children's book for adults. In my head, I believe I shared it with you, Vanessa, too, about sort of Burl Ives from the Rankin Bass
Right.
Christmas
Mm-hmm.
stop motion. Just that feeling, because it would make or break it. You're right, Mike. It would absolutely. But Benedict, as soon as we heard it, it was just wanted to sit by a fire with a
Yeah.
blanket.
Yeah. Little
Yeah.
cup of cocoa.
Can we get him to read Lord of the Rings or something for us? Long.
So, and you can tell him this. So, for me, as I was watching it, I'm listening to this. I got this perfect mashup. So it's funny because Kevin, you said looking at Disney and their animals when you were creating Christopher and those things, I couldn't help but feel at different times it was like the perfect marriage of Sebastian Cabot, who narrated all of the original Winnie the Pooh shorts,
Yeah.
Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, Blustery Day. Like I heard a blend of Sebastian Cabot and Boris Karloff doing the Grinch.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, yes.
It was like this marriage for me, and I mean that as the highest compliment. Even at one point when Christopher looks dead at the camera and says, and then he got an idea, and I'm like,
Oh, that delivery is spot on. It's a little bit like sinister, and the narrator's teasing something for
yeah,
us.
it
Yes.
it was like Karloff doing the Grinch, and I'm like, I am here for this 100%.
And it's
Oh, I
So
interesting.
love
There was
that.
that moment that we talked about too, when he said about Christopher got an idea. I remember the conversation about breaking the fourth wall.
Hmm.
Do we do it or we don't do it? And I'm glad we decided to do it because again, I think it's just that idea of flipping the page to the next story, and it just all of a sudden just pulls you in, where Christopher just kind of like
oh yeah,
waves out this thing that this narrator is bringing you through this lovely story, and then Christopher's pushing everything away,
yeah,
and the narrator. It's like,
Hmm.
get out of here. I'm
yeah.
doing what I want to
I,
do.
I'm remembering as you say that, just going back to the writing process for a second, there was some pushback on the narrator, period. Like I had heard from a few people, try it without a narrator, because obviously then it becomes a truly global film, and it doesn't have to be translated or dubbed. But it doesn't work without the narrator, I can tell you, because I did try. But then there was also some pushback on the narrator dropping out at one point in the film, because he's there with us the whole time. And then there is a point that the narrator steps back and pretty much goes, "Yeah, have at her, Christopher. You've made your bed." And then, of course, he joins us again at the end. But I was asked to write narration through the empty chunk that we have right now, and it did not work. Like, the narrator really became that character, the parental character, right?
Yeah.
That kind of oversaw Christopher up until the point that Christopher makes a real bad decision. And then the narrator had to step back and just let him sit in that moment and deal with the repercussions. But I'm remembering now that I did have to try to put dialogue over the scenes right now that are just carried by score. And it was a whole different film. It's almost like you wanted to say, "Shh, narrator, stop, like, enough, just quiet."
Well, for what it's worth, I felt it's good that it's not there, because this was just the right balance. I
Good,
was hooked in that world. Um,
good.
so this is a question I love to ask filmmakers, and especially because, Kevin, I know you've had a lot of experience directing television, but this was the first time doing a film. Vanessa, I believe your first short film as well that you directed. So, for filmmakers stepping into, and maybe into, a co-directing partnership, especially on a project like this, what would you say is a best practice that you learned from working on this project that you look forward to taking into your next, and maybe a learning curve that people might want to try to bypass?
Hmm, great question. For me, I would say never underestimate the power of pre-production, like across the board, from like a producing standpoint, but also in a creative collaboration standpoint. Kevin and I did so much of this film as part of the development phase. Like, this didn't carry the same pipeline it would have if we were doing a television series. We worked on the designs, and then we did the animatic, and then we scored the animatic with the full final score. And then we went and did a test scene. So by the time we officially launched into animation on the film, so many of the creative decisions had already been made that it made for a much easier, especially in a co-directing environment, it kind of made for an easier path as you sprinted to post production, because we just spent so much time talking about mood boards and what the style was, and how Christopher would sit on the couch. Having all those conversations up front, I would say, really helped as we got into production, because we were working with a smaller team and there really wasn't a lot of room for us to not be a divided or like a united front on the creative side of things. So I would say really spend a lot of time in pre-production world building before you jump onto your official green light, like animation.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I have anything uh, other to add. I mean, again, for me, for the short form, it was just how small the team was. Where, if I'm directing a series, there's could have over 100 people across the board. So that was really nice because you really got to work so closely one-on-one every day with your art director, your layout artist, your animator. So as a short form, I guess, if you can keep a tight knit team, a small team to
Mhm.
really collaborate and have this lovely journey together. If it works for your production schedule and the amount of time you have before you want to get this completed, that was a wonderful experience for me.
And one more before I have to let you both go. As people spend some time in Christopher and his world, what is something you each hope that audiences will leave the film with after it ends?
I would love it if the audience would leave the film and ask themselves if they have a bug in their life. Christopher has screened in some classrooms and different, it's been part of education programs in some of the film festivals that we've been in. So we have been able, we're really lucky to hear the younger demographics feedback on the film. And the core concept that they always seem to pull out of it is that idea of be nice to people. Like, if we could all just be friends, right? So I would love it if the audience left the theater, whether you're an adult or whether you're a child, asking yourself, if I'm Christopher, what is the bug in my life? And if I spent just a second trying to befriend it, or just, look the other way, or just be kinder, could I change for the better a little bit? That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, I agree. Again, this was like therapy. This story. It's, if you could talk to your younger self, right? And it's like, what would you tell yourself? And whenever people who have been in the industry for a long time, or closer to my age, it's usually like the don't sweat the small stuff, right? Don't let things agitate and build and become a bigger problem than it actually is. And Christopher hits those. So again, it'd be like those kind of questions to ask yourself is like, I'm losing sleep or stressing out about something. Nobody really cares. Why am I worrying about it? And I still need to work on that stuff. So I need
Me
to.
too.
So it's all about
I
that.
think
I,
we
I
all
would
do.
hope the audience takes that away.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because you said it's been shown as part of educational programs and festivals, and I work in education. I've done it for over 2 decades now. And, sometimes, and I will say this, and maybe it's bad, I'm going to say this on camera, but sometimes those bugs have been my colleagues.
Yeah, 100%.
Put a bunch of
I think
teachers
that's true
together.
for all
It's
of us.
sometimes worse than a group of kids.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Watch me
true.
get canceled now.
Let me ask you, Mike. I want
Sure.
to. I like asking this question.
Yeah.
At the end, I guess I'm not supposed to give anything away,
Uh,
but at the
I
end,
think you're okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, when the light turns on, who's that for you? Is that the bug is back?
Uh,
I was gonna ask you guys that question off camera. So
We could
um
leave
yeah.
it. We could leave it if you want.
I you know what? I want the audience, I don't want to spoil it for anyone that sees this, but I will be happy to tell you that when we end this, because I want that
Okay.
to be taken by the audience. But I do have an answer for you.
All
Good.
right.
I'm always very curious about that because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
huge twist for people, and it's interesting to see what people take away with, which is
So
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to leave this. So there's your cliffhanger, folks. If you want to check
amazing.
out
Go watch the film.
Christopher and the Bug, it's playing at the Cleveland International Film Festival this weekend. You can find the link to get tickets in the notes below the episode. So we'll make sure you can get that. Vanessa, Kevin, thank you again so much for taking the time to chat with me. Congratulations on the film. It's wonderful. I'm, looking forward to it becoming part of my Christmas rotation. Um, so thank you. Enjoy the festival. Everyone
Thank
listening
you
and
for having
watching.
us.
Yes. If you enjoyed this conversation, please make sure you subscribe to the channel here for more filmmaker interviews, festival coverage, and as always, your spoiler free reviews. And until next time, this is Cinephile Mike saying take a break and watch something new. Thank you both so much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.